Well, this is America, and our Constitution gives us the right to bear arms. This is not Tokyo. This is not Finland. This is not whatever other country you want to talk about, Piers. This is the United States of America. And in America, where law-abiding citizens have guns, crime is down.
It is a pleasure to introduce State Senator Dan Patrick. I know I've had an opportunity to get to know him, and we spent some time together at the Republican National Convention last year. I knew he was the person that I could talk to about education. I doubt that there are very many people in Texas that have more knowledge and experience about the issue of educating in Texas than Senator Patrick does. I know one of the things that we talked about was Governor Perry had set a goal of 65% of the school dollars being spent in the classroom, and I think that's very important. I think we need to shift from top-heavy administrative dollars to classroom dollars. Some of the legislation that he has passed, which he's most proud of, is placing In God We Trust permanently in the Senate chamber for the first time in history, placing Under God in the state pledge, passing a $170 million tax cut for small businesses, and in 2011, the sonogram bill to protect women and the unborn, and this year passed a major school choice bill. He has been recognized as Legislator of the Year by law enforcement and the District Attorneys Association for his tough stance on crime, been consistently ranked as the leading conservative in the Senate, was honored to receive multiple pro-life awards, the Texas Association of Business Top Award twice, recognized as the guardian of small business by the National Federation of Business. It was named the third most influential Republican in Texas by the Austin American-Statesman. Dan is chair of the Senate Education Committee and serves on a total of 6 committees, including some of the Morse committees in the Senate. Dan has been married to Jan, a former school teacher, for 38 years. Their son Ryan is a Harris County Criminal Court District Judge. Their daughter Shane is a registered nurse. And in 2010, Dan and Jan were blessed with their first grandson. Dan hosts a daily afternoon talk show on KSEV AM 700 in Houston, and has raised over $16 million for children's disabilities. He wrote a Christian bestseller and produced an award-winning Christian movie. Please welcome with me State Senator Dan Patrick, running for Lieutenant Governor.
Thank you. I'm going to take this out here. I'm always better when I'm on the move. First of all, thank you for your passion and commitment to government. Thomas Jefferson said, "We are a government of the majority, but only if the majority participates." And that's why we have lost much of the country that you and I grew up in. As they said on Duck Dynasty the other day, what's happened to us? And what has happened to America? We've lost our family values. We've lost our understanding of our Constitution of liberty. We have lost our way as a Republican Party at times, a party I'm proud to serve in and proud of many of the things we've done, but so many things that we no longer take a stand for. And if we don't turn it around in a very short time, we will lose this nation. Make no doubt about it. There is a war going on for the soul of this country, and you're on the front line, and I'm proud to be with you. First, let me introduce my wife is with me today. Jan, stand up very briefly and wave. I'm sorry, it's in the dark there. Now, I'm not the Lieutenant Governor, hope to be with your vote, so I don't have 3 DPS officers to provide the transportation security. I count on her to drive and her CHL. And she's a good driver and a good shot, and it doesn't cost the taxpayers any money. We have been on the road, and it's a blessing for the two of us. It's a blessing. We left, well, Monday night I was in Kingwood, Texas at an event. Tuesday morning I was at an event with Ted Cruz in Houston, drove to San Antonio, did 3 events, drove back to Houston, did an event in Houston. Then we drove to Dallas on Wednesday, Fort Worth Thursday. We flew to San Antonio yesterday, went to an event in Fredericksburg last night, are here today, driving to Tyler for a debate on C-Scope tonight. And we'll talk about that briefly. And then we go back to Dallas tomorrow, back to Houston on Monday, and back to Lufkin and Centerville on Monday and Tuesday. So I need a good pillow and a good driver. And so, you know, Jan and I we've been married 38 years. We have a grandson. We have one coming in January and another in February, and we're really excited. There's nothing greater than grandchildren for those of you who are grandparents. And so we're blessed to go around Texas, meet so many wonderful people. There are a lot of us, folks. We're not alone. In 1988, I came to Houston, by the way, any of you from Houston who remember me from Channel 11 here? A few people. As I always tell people, you were just a child when you were watching me. I came here in 1979 as a sportscaster with the CBS station in Houston, Texas. And since that time, we've had our ups and downs in life like most people, but we have been truly, truly blessed to be in Texas. It's been great to us. And in 1988, I bought this little radio station. I'd been in the restaurant business for a few years in the mid-'80s, went broke. Jan and I worked, everything from waiting tables to cleaning the bathrooms. You do what you need to do when you're in small business. And so we've had our ups and downs in 38 years. And at 36, so we were looking at the bottom. We were broke, like a lot of people were in Texas, and we said, we're not going to quit. We're not going to depend on government. We're going to depend on God. We're going to pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps. And we went and bought this little radio station with some other investors' money because we didn't have any. And I found this guy by the name of Rush Limbaugh. No one had ever heard of Rush in 1988. He couldn't get on a radio station in 1988 anywhere. They thought, you can't talk about conservative politics on the radio. Are you crazy? Because no one did before that in talk radio. He was kind of the Babe Ruth of talk radio. He invented it. And we put Rush on, and the rest was history. And we rode those coattails. And what made Rush successful, what has made Mike Huckabee, who I'm proud to has endorsed our campaign, he's a great, great dear friend, successful, is he says what you're thinking, what people are thinking. We know the values that this country was founded upon. We know where we need to go. And I want to talk a little bit about that in the short time. I don't want to go too long today because you've already listened to a number of speeches. I know Marcia Farney, by the way, is coming up after me. Marcia Farney and Senator Charles Swartner are two terrific representatives and serve you well. Marcia and I worked on a couple of bills together, and Charles Swartner is just class all the way, just class. So let me tell you a little bit about why every vote's important and why Texas is important. The world is in chaos as we know it today. Imagine if America were not a military or an economic power. And if this president was able to stay in power longer, thank goodness the Constitution prohibited, we would not be a world military or an economic power. But without a strong America, the world is totally in chaos. And America needs a strong Texas. They can't depend on California. We can't depend on Michigan or New York. We're it, folks. If Texas fails, America fails. And Texas will fail if Democrats take over. And let me tell you why. Because you can't win the White House if you don't have electoral votes from Texas. If the Democrats have California, New York, and Texas, we will never elect another Republican to the White House, ever. The math doesn't work. And that's why we have a target on our back. And it's one of the reasons I'm running for Lieutenant Governor, and I'll share that with you in a moment. So what we do here in Texas is vitally important, not just to be a state with Republican leadership, but conservative Republican leadership. When I was elected to office in 2006, everyone said, Dan can't win the race. The conventional wisdom was in Austin, Dan can't win. He's a radio guy. I had 3 opponents in the race. They were 2 chairman of House committees and a city councilman. They outspent me 5-1, and we got 70% of the vote in a 4-way race and didn't have a runoff. And everyone said, well, of course he won. He was the radio guy. Being the radio guy had nothing to do with it. Talking about issues. Because you see, elected officials will come and go. Politicians will come and go. But like the Word of God always remains the same, conservative values and principles that this nation were founded upon always remain the same. You just have to have leaders in each generation to hand the baton of peace and prosperity to the next generation. And in Texas, I'm proud of all the things we've done as Republicans, and I've been a major part of that since 2007. Again, as you saw on the slide, I put in God we trust in the Senate. I walked into the Senate one day and I said, how come we don't have a God we trust in here? How come we haven't done that? Let's do it. And we did it. How come we don't have under God in our state pledge? Never had it? Let's do it. We did it. How come we haven't passed the sonogram bill to protect life? We did it. And I could go down a long list of other legislation, over 100 bills we passed. But I'm not a show horse, I'm a workhorse. I've missed 6 votes out of 16,000. I've missed 1 half day when you saw me debating with Piers Morgan on their CNN. I took a half day off from the Senate. I've missed a half day in 650. I show up for duty. I am a small business guy. I understand what it is to go broke, and I understand what it takes to be successful, and that's low government regulations and low taxes. There are 3 things I'm running on as Lieutenant Governor. And then the 4th is the most important. But in terms of policy issues, number 1 is border security. It's the government's responsibility to protect our border, but they're not doing their job, and it's our problem. This is not about immigrants. It's not about being against, it's not being anti-Hispanic or anti-immigrant. It is about law and order. We know that drug cartel members are crossing our border. We know that terrorists have crossed our border and been apprehended. I don't know how many have crossed that have not been apprehended. But we cannot continue as a society to live in peace and prosperity if we let the rest of the world, including criminals, flood across our border. Priority number 1, and there's so much more we can do as a state that has not been done. I'm not running talking about all the great things we've done. I'm running because of all the things that have been on the shelf for 10 years, even though we've had Republican leaders. We have not passed the Sanctuary City bill. We have not put border security as a priority. Number 2, I'm running. Now, some of you have your property taxes frozen, which is a good thing when you hit a certain age, but many of you haven't, and we have to address property taxes. My second issue, the Republican Party has not seriously addressed property taxes, and you should not live in a state where you pay off your house and have to rent it to the government for the rest of your life through property taxes. That needs to end. You should be able to live in your home. 3, priority, and Mike, who's done a great job, Mike, thank you for putting this together with all of the leaders up here, is education. Let me tell you the situation that we're in very quickly, folks, and it's a crisis. And as chairman of education this year, we passed a lot of school reform, but we passed a big charter choice bill, but school choice has to be part of the conversation. We have to get that bill passed. It must be done. We have a situation in Texas, folks, where we have about a 40 to 50% dropout rate in our inner cities. 40 to 50%. You can't have a future as a state if half of the next generation doesn't have a high school diploma. Not when 80% of all jobs in the future will require a work certificate or a 2-year degree or a 4-year degree. You won't be able to live in a community with a wall high enough or a fence strong enough to keep the criminal element out. Because when you don't have a high school education, you're more likely to have a child out of wedlock, be on government programs, live a life in poverty, and go to jail. You know what the single common denominator is between our 158,000 people who are in prison in Texas? It's that about 70% of them have a 4th grade reading level. We cannot kick this can down the road. We already have school choice. It's a big fight, but we already have school choice. If you're rich enough, you send your kids to private school. If you're mobile enough, you move to the suburbs, to a better school district. But if you're poor and you live in the inner city, and you're not rich enough, and you can't move to the suburbs because you depend on public transportation, and you're a hard-working single mom doing her best, or a grandmother bringing up her children, you're trapped in a poor-performing, failing school. We must give those parents a way out. We must create competition in our public school system. That is the only way to turn around our failing inner-city schools. It's not just a civil rights issue for that family, but it's important for our state. How can it be that the left, the Democrats, want a woman to have a choice to kill a child in the womb, but if she has that child, not to have a choice for her to send that child to school? It's just morally wrong. We had a hearing on one of our choice bills this session, and we had 2 busloads of African-American citizens come down from Fort Worth, from the inner city district, and they formed choice for their choice program for their city. They want school choice. And the last gentleman, who was a grandfather, testified, and I can never say it with the passion that he said, but he was so right. He said, I just want to ask the senators in this committee, why do I have to come here and ask permission to send my grandchild to the school I want to send it to? We as a party can reach out and get the African American vote and get the Hispanic vote by giving them an opportunity for the American dream through a great education. We had the opportunity this session, and we did not pass that bill because we didn't have leadership. And that's the key reason I'm running, is for leadership. I have 3 credible opponents who are nice people. But we don't have time to kick the can down the road anymore. There's no excuse that we haven't passed Sanctuary City. There's no excuse why we haven't passed school choice. There's no excuse why we haven't addressed property taxes, except we haven't had leadership behind it. Nothing happens in the Texas Senate unless a lieutenant governor who runs the Texas Senate wants it to happen. And nothing happens in the House unless the Speaker wants it to happen. If you look at the legislature and say, why didn't these bills pass? 99, not 100%, but 99% of the time, it's because leadership, at the end of the day, was not committed to making it happen. The night of the filibuster was the day I decided we needed new leadership. Because you already know that the Democrats have a target on our back. You already know they want to take the state, so there's never a Republican president again. And what did we do on the night of the filibuster? We lifted up an unknown Democrat to be a rock star in that party, who most likely is going to run against Greg Abbott for governor. She'll lose. But she is going to pound the Republican Party and conservatives with millions of dollars that will pour in from around the country for her campaign to set the plate for 2018 and 2022 for the Democrats to take over. That's what it's all about. They're hoping for a miracle she pulls it off and wins. That night should have never happened. We had the majority in the Texas Senate, and if you don't know how it works in a special session, the governor puts the bills on the call, and a special session can last up to 30 days. We had 4 bills to pass. We have the governor, the speaker, and the lieutenant governor, all Republicans, and we have the majority in the House and the Senate. We got down to the last night with 12 hours to go, and we'd only passed 1 bill in 30 days. It's just poor management. That's not knowing how to operate a calendar. The mob that got out of control. It was a vision of not seeing what was happening. I knew she was going to filibuster, and you know why I knew? If anyone says, well, we didn't know, because you have to turn in a letter that says I'm filibustering. We knew what was coming. So, 6 senators, myself and 5 others, said, we're going to stop it. And how do we stop it? There's Robert's Rules of Order, and we can call the previous question and shut down her debate. It takes 1 senator and 5 seconds. I had my 5 seconds. I was the senator. I turned in my card to the lieutenant governor, and I was never called on. Never called on. I went up, and Senator Paxton, who's running for Attorney General now, who was one of my 5 seconds, he'll verify this. I went up to the podium and said to the lieutenant governor, we need to move the previous question. Give us 1 more hour. Let her talk for another hour. Let her talk for another hour. Time and time. Look at we were getting tweets on our phones that said, picking up from the mob upstairs, rush the floor if they try to move the previous question. They knew what we were up to. It's only a $500 fine. They knew. They had a plan. We were unprepared. And so I did move the previous question. You know when I got to move the previous question? 15 minutes before midnight. A little late. So we've created this Democrat when we should never have done it. Should never have done it. There is, in my campaign, if you don't know the differences in policy, if you don't know the difference in leadership, if you don't know how things are done, then you won't know who to choose. I'm not going to run a negative campaign. I'm not going to attack people in their personal lives or their personal business. I don't care. You don't care. You want to know what's important to you. And what's important to you is to make sure the conservatives lead as conservatives. Let me tell you something else as Lieutenant Governor I won't do. I will not appoint 50% of the Democrats to chairman of committees in the Texas Senate. There are 19 Republicans and 12 Democrats. 6 Democrats are chairman of committees. And we have conservative Republican senators sitting on the bench. Now, I was a chairman this session of education. And very quickly, I'll tell you how it works. When you're the chairman, you control the committee. I had about 400 bills come to me in education. I sit down with my committee. I decide which bills are heard. I decide on all the conservative bills, for the most part. There were some other good bills by other members. But we decide. So the chairman has tremendous power. And when 6 Democrats are in control of key committees, guess what? Our conservative legislation seldom gets out. Second, we have a 21 vote rule in the Senate. And very quickly, here's what it means. Any bill only takes 16 members to pass the bill out of 31. But we have to have 21 members to bring a bill to the floor. That means on every bill, we have to have 2 Democrats, because there are only 19 of us. And guess what? Every Democrat waters down the bill or stops the bill. Every time. Now, that's a Senate vote. As Lieutenant Governor, you can't control that. The senators can. But here's the job of a Lieutenant Governor. The Lieutenant Governor makes sure that Democrats don't abuse that rule. Make sure that Democrats who are chairmen of committees don't abuse that rule. You want to know why we didn't pass those bills you want passed? Because we have too many Democrats as chairmen of committees and the 21 vote rule. You need to know. Because you have to scratch your head and say, wait a minute, we're electing conservatives. We have more conservatives in the House we've ever had, more conservatives in the Senate than we've ever had. We're in the Republican majority. How come we're not getting the job done? Because the two most powerful people in the entire legislature are the 9th or the 20th and 21st Democrats on every bill. Because every bill that passes the House has to come to the Senate. That's why we didn't get some of that legislation passed. I want to leave you with this and close. Our demographers tell us that in the next by 2040, we're going to add 20 million more Texans. Now, I want you to think about this. We all remember the hanging chads? That was 13 years ago, I have to tell you. There were 18 million of us. Now we have 25 million. We've added 7 million people since the hanging chads. So I want you to think about adding 20 million more, almost doubling the size of the state now. But we only meet every other year in session, as you all know. So 26 years is only 13 sessions. We only vote on bills really the last 2 months. We voted about 4,000 times in the last 2 months. So if there's 20 million people coming here in 26 years, that's only 13 sessions times 2 months of actually voting on legislation. We have 26 months to pass legislation to make sure that our conservative principles and values will be there for the next generation. And my guess is we're not always going to have a Republican governor, lieutenant governor, speaker, and majority of each side for all of those 13 sessions. And we surely won't if we continue not to get the job done our conservative grassroots want us to get done. When it comes to, I voted against the budget this year. I was one of 4 senators to vote against the budget because we're spending too much money. I've always been a conservative leader, and I'm always rated number 1 or number 2 over 16,000 votes. So a lot of people come up and say, I'm a conservative. But look at past performance to predict where someone's going to be. 16,000 votes, 4 sessions, and I'm number 1, number 2, fiscal and social conservative. I will lead. We need a lieutenant governor who has the energy, the passion, an impeccable conservative record, who will be bold, who will work in a bipartisan way, as I did as chairman of education, but who will make it clear that we are a conservative state, led by conservative Republicans, and we need to lead in a conservative fashion. Last thing on money. We have plenty of money in this country and plenty of money in this state to take care of the people we need to take care of, which are 4 groups of people. If you're a child and you're in need, we have an obligation to take care of you. We can't hold a child responsible because they have a missing or an idiotic or an irresponsible parent. And sadly, there are a lot, do you realize that we have a higher rate of children born into single-parent homes than we've ever had in the history of our country? And a lot of single moms are working real hard to try and do the best. But don't hold the child responsible. And senior citizens. Now, you're blessed. Many of you live in this great community. You live here. But not everyone is as blessed. Some seniors are alone. Some, even though they work their whole lives, they're never able to make enough money. They have a tough time getting by on a little bit of a pension or a Social Security check. And they're struggling, health care issues. We need to take care of our senior citizens who just need some help. We need to take care of our veterans when they come home, whether they're mentally or physically wounded. That's an obligation. You're going out on the front lines and taking a bullet for us, and we're not going to take care of you. And then we need to take care of those who are severely disabled. I've been working in the community with children with disabilities for a long time, but disabled adults who can't take it, we have that obligation. But if you're not a poor child, a poor senior, a poor soldier in need, or a disabled person in need, then get off your butt, get an education, get a job, and don't expect the American taxpayer to pick up the tab for your life. Let's go back to what this country was founded upon. I give you my word. If you give me your vote and elect me as lieutenant governor, I will be a bold leader for you. The Democrats will not control the Senate. There will not be mob rule ever again in the Texas Senate. And we will try. I never guarantee anything in life. But we will do everything we can to pass the legislation that I know we need, that you know we need, to pass on that baton of peace and prosperity for the next legislation. We'll get it out of the Senate, and we'll send it over to the House, and we'll put pressure on them. I'm a blessed person. My dad was a blue-collar guy, Marine in the Second World War. My mom and dad never made a lot of money. Worked my way through school. They were great parents. I've had a great wife of 38 years. My son's a judge. My daughter's a nurse. 3 grandchildren, and many friends living in a great state. I'm dedicating myself to make sure we preserve that state for my grandchildren and your grandchildren and your children and my children. Thank you very much. I'm at danpatrick.org. By the way, those of you interested in C-Scope, I didn't get to that. I've already talked too long. There's a debate tonight. If you go to danpatrick.org, my website, and Logan is back there, the guy with the red camera over there. There are flyers back there. Get my Facebook or website. We're going to stream the debate.